I invite you to join with me in prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for calling us here this day to celebrate and honor the spring 2013 graduates from the College of Law. We pray your Spirit's presence be with those who receive their hoods and awarded their degrees this day. May our time together be directed by your hand, filled with joyful smiles and warm hearts, touched by solemn ritual. Today is truly a day of thanksgiving, gracious God, for your guidance in bringing us to this place at this hour for this joyous occasion. To you, Holy God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, we pray. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Chaplain Francis. I would like to welcome all the family and friends of our graduates of the class of 2013. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I start my remarks, I would like to take a moment to introduce two additional members of the TU community who join us on the podium, but who also have joined us as an institution on a very significant journey towards excellence. If I could ask President Stedman Upham and Provost Roger Blaze to please rise, and let's thank them. I would also like to recognize some members of the Board of Trustees of the University of Tulsa who are with us today. Chair of the Board, Dwayne Wilson, Steve Turnbow, Rondi Whiteman, and John Williams, thank you very much for joining us here today, and thank you for your support. Now, it's time to welcome the true guests of honor, the graduates. Your accomplishments are truly remarkable, and this is your day. I encourage you to soak it all in, to relish this moment. You have earned it, you have worked hard, and all of us are very, very proud. This week, I am speaking not at one, but at two graduation ceremonies. The first, of course, is today, the College of Law hooding ceremony. And we have almost arrived at the moment where each of you will take your walk across the stage, where you will earn your JD, your LLM, or for the first time, we're offering an MJ, and we have some graduates, some MJ graduates today. The second graduation ceremony that I will be participating in is the Women in Recovery graduation. That ceremony will not have the pomp of bagpipes or Jumbotron simulcasts. It will take place very quietly in the Tulsa County Courthouse, but it will be no less significant for those who will be graduating. For those of you here today who are not familiar, Women in Recovery is an intensive, year-long prison diversionary program for nonviolent women offenders. The program is truly state-of-the-art. It's born of a compact between judges, prosecutors, nonprofits, and philanthropists, many of whom, like you, walked across the stage to receive their law degree from the University of Tulsa College of Law. And I am so proud that some of you graduating today provided legal services to these women through our externship program, and I am also very proud that the law school will be expanding the depth and breadth of these services through the Lobeck-Taylor Family Advocacy Clinic. Now, on the surface, The audiences that I will be addressing this week in these two ceremonies could not be more different. Yet, as I sat down to write both sets of remarks, some of the themes surprisingly began to converge. And it struck me that the keys to building a successful personal and professional trajectory, whether starting on the precipice of a prison sentence or like you today with the lift of a law school diploma, are remarkably similar and remarkably simple. And there are three: work hard, lean on, and give back. So first, hard work. In building careers, even in building our personal lives, there is simply no substitute for hard, focused work. Success demands effort. It demands motivation. Success requires that you move through the days when there are setbacks with grace and sustained commitment to excellence, and that you avoid complacency on days when all appears to be going well. If I were to put a label on your generation, it would be the now generation. You thrive on instant communication, instant gratification, and I fear you expect instant success. Yet careers in and around the law are long trajectories that often take years to blossom and hit stride. Careers are marathons. They are not sprints. And anyone who has run any distance, and I know there's several of you here who did because we did the Tulsa Run together just a couple years ago. For anyone who's run distance knows that even on those coldest of mornings, you just have to put in the miles in order to build the necessary endurance. In our wired, high-tech, app-driven world, we are always looking for shortcuts, time-saving efficiencies, ways to multitask our way to a faster finish. In the world of the law, there is just no way to shortcut good, old-fashioned hard work. Second, we have heard a lot recently about leaning in, and I presume that we will hear a lot also about leaning out, but I ask you today to lean on. What do I mean by lean on? Lean on those around you ready to help, ready to mentor, ready to lend an ear, or ready to give advice. None of us journey alone. And while it sounds cliche, it really does take a village. You already know this well because each and every one of you arrives here today only through the support, the sacrifice, and the love of family, friends, and mentors. Graduates, I think it's only appropriate that you take a minute to stand, try to find your family and friends in the audience, try to make eye contact, and give them a round of applause. And another part of your community that was critical to getting you through law school are the faculty and staff who sit behind me today. Your professors are the core from which the school's passion for law and passion for justice radiates. Each TU law professor is a unique bundle of experiences and insights, and we are joined as a faculty through an unswerving commitment to our students' professional development. I would like to take a moment to recognize 3 professors who are retiring at the end of this academic year: Professor Chris Blair, Professor Marguerite Chapman, and Professor Rick Paschal. They cannot join us here today, but we are extremely grateful for their service, and they will be greatly missed. I would also like to recognize a colleague who is sort of re-retiring today, Marty Fry. Marty, if you could stand. Marty, we thank you for your years of service, and also for your generous financial support to create the Phyllis Hurley Fry Professorship and the Marty Fry Plaza in the MLIC. Just as your personal community supported you through law school, you now enter a tremendous professional community, the legal community. Get involved in local bar associations. Join your young professionals groups. Become a member of the TU Law Alumni Association, and stay connected to your classmates. Learn from the paths that others have charted. Do not try to go at it alone. Whether you stay in Oklahoma or venture forth, lean on your professional community. Your career will be all the stronger and all the richer for it. If my first piece of advice is work hard, and the second is lean on others, the third is give back. A meaningful career, indeed a meaningful life, is one dedicated to giving back. I recently went back and looked at some of the personal statements that you wrote in your law school applications. Almost all of you articulated a save the world mentality as the primary reason for attending law school. Yet often, all too often, I fear that this idealism fades somewhere between memorizing elements of a tort, subciting law review articles, writing Blue Book exam after Blue Book exam, and the specter of mounting law school debt. We, as members of the legal profession, have an obligation to serve those in need. I love driving to Oklahoma City twice a year to attend the bar swearing-in ceremony at the state capitol, where I watch our graduates take the oath of office, and where I hope I'll be watching many of you take the oath of office this September. That ceremony is a periodic reminder that we are officers of the court, that we hold a vaunted position, a position that straddles the public and the private, and in exchange for this benefit, we all have a responsibility towards those less fortunate than ourselves. But beyond obligation, beyond responsibility, I have found, and I have watched in others, deep personal satisfaction and fulfillment in living a life committed to helping others who are less fortunate than ourselves. One of the greatest legacies that this class leaves the College of Law is the creation of our Public Interest Law Board. That group is charged with consolidating and directing all the law school's pro bono and public service activities with the hope that the College of Law can strengthen its impact in the Kendall Whittier neighborhood and beyond. I urge you to weave this legacy into your career. I have found that giving back to others pays even greater dividends in return. It is no secret to anyone graduating today, and probably no secret to most in this room, that some are questioning quite loudly and poignantly whether it makes sense to go to law school. In response, I have become somewhat obsessed with asking students, faculty, colleagues, practicing lawyers, alumni, and judges whether, if doing it all over again, they would go to law school and join the profession. To a T, they all said yes. And when I asked why, the answer was also a constant, if not cliche, refrain. They said, with a law degree, you can help change and improve people's lives. So to those who are questioning the value of a law degree, yes, certainly it's possible to put a price tag on education. Yet the ability to make a difference in people's lives, that is priceless. Congratulations, class of 2013. You've made us very proud. Our speaker today has dedicated his life, his career, to service. James R. Winchester was appointed as a member of the Supreme Court of Oklahoma by Governor Frank Keating in 2000. He served as Chief Justice of the court from January 2007 to December 2008. He is a native of Clinton, Oklahoma. He received his Bachelor's of Art from the University of Oklahoma and his Juris Doctorate from Oklahoma City University. After graduating from law school, Justice Winchester practiced law in Western Oklahoma before being named Associate District Judge for Caddo County in January 1983. In December 1983, at age 30, he became one of the youngest district judges in the state when he was appointed by Governor George Nye as a district judge for the 6th Judicial District of Oklahoma. Justice Winchester, we are honored that you are here to address our graduating class. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. It's nice to be here. If you will allow me one time to look back when I was about where you were, I interned in Andy Coates' office. Andy Coates was the dean of the OU Law School, but he's also district attorney. This is 30-some years ago. And I was sent down to District Judge Homer Smith's courtroom to do a sentencing. My job being an intern was when it came time for the judge to recognize the state, all I had to say was the jury recommends 35 years, and so does the district attorney's office. I showed up in the courtroom. There was another lawyer that was there named Garvin Isaacs, who's of some renown. Garvin was there. He had the defendant, and you can always tell the defendant in the courtroom because they're the ones in the orange jumpsuit. You want to make sure you wear a tie because you get to go home. So I showed up at that time. We started the sentencing, and I hear Judge Smith say, "Do you have any witnesses?" Well, I didn't have any witnesses. My part was to say 35 years. And so all of a sudden, Mr. Isaacs calls this witness. All of a sudden, I panic. I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back and tell Mr. Coates that this person that robbed somebody that the jury gave 35 years, Mr. Isaacs walked him out of there. My whole legal career ended before I even passed the bar. So it came my turn. Judge Smith looked at me and he said, "Mr. Winchester, do you have any questions of this witness?" I said, "I only have one." I said, "How long have you known the defendant?" Judge Smith leaned over the bench and he said, "Mr. Winchester, this is his mother." Fortunately, I had no other questions to embarrass myself. And now, having been on the bench for some 20-some years, he got 35 years. The courtroom emptied. I couldn't move. I just sat there, and the court reporter, who was a young court reporter, motioned for me to come towards the bench. I walked up there. She looked at me and she said, "That's just about the stupidest question I've ever heard anybody ask." So I will tell you that although you graduate from these people, you now move into the world that I know and that I enjoyed and loved. It's nice to be here. It's a pleasure to be at the University of Tulsa. You have a beautiful campus. I am impressed that you selected such a fine university and fine law school. It will serve you well, support it in the future. You're among the few individuals that have both an undergraduate degree and a professional degree, and that is no small task. I'd commend also, as the dean did, your parents for their encouragement and their commitment in helping you reach that goal. They share your success. I also am always impressed with the faculty. None of us could accomplish near as much as we did if we didn't have good faculty and good teachers. They really make that, and I'm impressed with that. Parker Palmer is an educator and wrote this, and I think this sums up what good teaching is, so I offer this to the faculty. Good teaching cannot be reduced to technique. Good teaching comes from identity and integrity of the teacher. Good teachers share one trait. They're truly present in the classroom, deeply engaged in their students and their subjects. They're able to weave a complex web of connection among themselves, their subject and students, so that the student can weave a complex connection for themselves. Those connections by good teachers are not held in the methods, but in their hearts, a place where intellect, emotion, and spirit converge. Ms. Cordell called me a month, 45 days ago and said, "Jim, will you speak?" I said I would be happy to. She sent me a letter outlining my duties. They were, pick any topic, but typically, Jim, our speakers speak about ethics, power of the profession, and leading a happy life. You have 15 minutes. I know that I stand between you and that diploma. So when picking my topic, when I'm asked to speak in this too, I was reminded of the seminary student who was going to take their final exam the next day. The professor had a reputation for using the same test question each time. She had that question, she had a copy of it, she relied on that approach, and she studied it. And the question was, write a critical essay of the letters of Paul. The next day, the student arrived in class prepared to answer that exam question. She looked at the question and was shocked. The question was, write a critical essay of the sermons of Christ. She saw her career flash before her eyes. She was surprised and stunned. She looked around and obviously saw other students who had prepared for the same question. Write a critical essay of the letters of Paul. She thought a minute, and she began. Who am I to question the sermons of Christ? But now the letters of Paul, that's a different thing. So, regardless of what she wanted me to speak about, I'm going to take this liberty, if you will. You know, your professors have schooled you in civil and criminal procedure, evidence and torts and contracts. They have anointed you with ethics. You focused on the client, on the court, and your charge will be to use those skills to represent your client in whatever circumstances they find themselves in and try to solve their problem. If you don't solve their problem, you haven't accomplished a great deal for them or for you. Try to solve that. And I am confident that you have been prepared well. What I want to focus on is what I think the legal profession can give to you. I practiced law for about 4 years out in Weatherford and Hinton, Oklahoma, but when I went to court, I was pretty uncomfortable. I needed to be where there was more interaction with the law. I needed to go back to school, if you will. And at that point, it's kind of the college of hard knocks. I tried to figure out how to do that. I thought about applying with a firm in Oklahoma City, but I wasn't top 10% of the law school class, so that was not much of a reality for me. And I figured out that the place that I had to go was the place I was most uncomfortable with, and that was the courthouse. And so I was given the opportunity of going on the bench in Caddo County, which is county seats Anadarko. And I found that by putting myself in that position, that on a daily basis, that I got to see the beginning of a divorce, simple custody matter at the beginning, temporary custody, temporary child support. The next day I might hear a full divorce with two different lawyers, two different parties. It could be the end of the week that I heard a post-divorce proceeding where they'd already had the divorce and they wanted to change custody, raise child support, or something of this matter. It compressed my learning, and for me as a student, and some of you may be this way, law school for me was, I had great professors, seemed like a lot of small pieces to a big jigsaw puzzle. And when I got out, put myself in that position, then I was able to put that together. I would hope if I went back to law school now, I could do a little bit better than I did. But for me, that courthouse was the place that I learned by having my hands on. And so I did a number of trials. I could do jury trials all week long, work with 6 to 8 lawyers, and accomplish that. I found that those lawyers and those court clerks became my lifelong teachers after law school. They loaned me their confidence while I created my own and wove that connection for me. Clarence Darrow, the other group of people that I'll talk about that were important to me were the people that were not lawyers, that were jurors that came into my courthouse on a weekly and monthly basis to sit and hear the circumstances that people found themselves in. Clarence Darrow in 1936 said this: "When court opens, the bailiff intones some voodoo sing-song words in an ominous voice that carries fear and respect at the opening of the rite." We'd have 80 to 100 jurors come in each week, and they would be there to hear anything from a simple dog bite case to car wrecks to contract cases to even murder cases, first degree, and some with death penalties. I was always surprised at first, because I'd only been out in practice 4 or 5 years, surprised that we would send these people in the community a summons, promise that we would pay them at the time $20 per day for their service plus round-trip mileage. If they stayed late, we might buy them a meal. And they showed up for some reason. Now, some suggested it's because we might send the sheriff out. But being an elected judge, I knew that was not a good strategy. We asked them to decide a case in open court, to make that decision not based on something they had heard at the grocery store, at the co-op, at the bank, or anywhere else, but to make that decision only there. That they would follow the law and the instructions that I as a judge determined that they would be, and admonish them that sympathy, sentiment, and prejudice had no place in this trial. And then we had asked them the golden rule for jurors. If you had to trade places with this plaintiff or this defendant, would you want a juror like you in your frame of mind? In the 15 years I tried hundreds of jury trials, and I made it a habit after each one to talk with the jurors as a panel, not so much to engage that they were right or wrong because they made the decision, but to find out what was effective and what was less effective. They were good in that they would tell me what they thought a lawyer did that was more helpful to them in understanding the case, and they would talk about, say, the presentation of evidence if it were presented in a different way or what their struggle was, so that I had some practical feedback. One of the questions that I would ask them before releasing them is, if your neighbor received a jury summons next session, what would you tell them to do? Nearly 100% of them said, come to jury service. They had a greater appreciation for the job that judges and that lawyers did, and a greater confidence in our system. And they wouldn't have had that had they not tested themselves, put themselves in a place that they had to be tested. The last question that I asked them, and especially if they served on a murder case or something that there was a lot of emotion involved in, I would ask them, how are you different today after having made these difficult decisions than you were at the beginning of the week before you came to jury service? And most of the time I had the opportunity to watch them as they took those 3 different oaths to see how the responsibility weighed on their shoulders, and as they viewed that evidence and realized that these were human beings, that they affected their lives. So in doing that, I always got pretty well the same answer. One, they felt better about themselves, not good or bad, but that they had placed themselves in a position and a place to change. Their life had been changed because of jury service. And I found that common denominator for me that led me to the court that I think led you to law school. All human beings want to be tested, and they want to be held to a higher standard. As lawyers, we're charged with creating the opportunity for justice to happen. Just as jurors are charged with their experience, we receive ours also. Darrow made this observation: small wonder that ambitious, imaginative youth crowd the profession of law. Here they feel they themselves will find the opportunity to play a real part in the comedies as well as the tragedies of life. Everyone, no matter how small his or her chance may be, tries to hold the center of some stage where the multitudes will scan their every move. To most, it seems as though the courts were organized to furnish them a chance to bask in the public eye. In this field, the adventure of life will never pall, but prove interesting, exciting, and changeable to the end. And this is the important part. Not only will he or she have the destinies of men to protect and preserve, but their own standing and success to create. I will tell you that values still matter. The world is still looking for authentic people willing to challenge themselves and others to this higher standard. Welcome to the profession of law.
Good afternoon. At this time, we are going to announce the 2 College of Law Awards, the 2 highest awards at the College of Law Awards in each academic year. The first is the Martin Fellow Smith Award. It's awarded to a graduating student designated by the faculty as the most outstanding student in the College of Law. That student's scholastic average and exhibited qualities of leadership are considered. The 2013 award for the Martin Fellows Smith goes to Elizabeth Nicole Saunders. The next award is the Judge W. Lee Johnson Award, awarded to the graduating student with the highest cumulative grade point average of the class of 2013. This year's award goes to Rachel Jones. At this time, the president of the College of Law Alumni Association will say a few words to the graduating class. This year's president is Mr. William Lasorsa.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of the University of Tulsa College of Law Alumni Association, it is my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you into our Alumni Association. Classically, there were only three professions: divinity, medicine, and law. Historically, a person who is admitted to a profession enjoyed a high social status and public esteem. Today, there are a number of professions. I'm here today to answer one important question I'm sure you all share as individuals who are about to enter the legal profession. What lies ahead for me? I believe you will find your professional years to be exciting and challenging. You will have a great many choices and decisions to make. For example, the geographical location of where you choose to practice, the size of the law firm you join, and the area of law in which you will practice. But no choice, no decision you will make will be any more important than the one I will share with you today. The choice you make is one you must make at the start of your legal career because it has such great impact on your success in our profession. You cannot wait to make this decision. Waiting to make this decision is, in fact, a decision, a wrong decision. The decision you must make is whether you will accept your responsibilities as a member of the legal profession, whether you will embrace your work as a profession and not just simply a job. In my experience, lawyers generally fall into two categories. The first category belongs to those lawyers who approach their work and careers like any other job. They go to work and they go home. The second category belongs to those lawyers who truly embrace what they do, not as a job, but as a profession. They embrace the high ideals of the legal profession by zealously representing their clients, by service to our judicial system, and service to our community. This is not an easy decision to make. Everyone wants to get started. Everyone wants to start making money, maybe begin the repayment of student loans or some other obligation, which are important. It certainly would be easier to say, I have no time. I must make a living. But I submit to you that the hard choice is also the best business decision you will ever make, because of the rewards which will come to you in the form of knowledge that your service to our community is in the highest traditions of our profession, as well as the networking that will naturally follow from your efforts. Lawyers who embrace the profession are far more successful than those who go down the other path. I urge you to commit to these high ideals. If your intent is to practice here in Oklahoma, I urge you, if you are not already involved, to get involved in the Oklahoma Bar Association, your bar association, the Oklahoma Bar Foundation, the Tulsa County Bar Association, and our Alumni Association. I urge you to become involved in a civic organization, a nonprofit, a charity, or some other organization which is an appropriate fit for each of you. You will find that when you share your talents with organizations worthy of those talents, you will be rewarded many times over. Again, on behalf of all TU Law alumni, I say welcome.
Hey there, everybody. My name is Nolan Fields, and I'm the Student Bar Association president. So I think my purpose as speaker this afternoon, as I understand it, is twofold. One, to share a few parting shots on behalf of the law school class, and two, to introduce our class valedictorian. In law school, I learned that we all have incredibly short and ever-decreasing attention spans. That goes for law students studying for final exams and jurors mentally checking out at trial. Based on these observations and what my trial practice class drilled into me, I will employ a theme and leverage the magical rule of threes in an attempt to keep your interest and attention during the speech. So I had 8 pages here, and I cut that in half because I'm like, no one wants to hear this stuff. And then I said I could compare this speech to a beard, and I decided not to do that. So I will say that law school is like a road trip. In preparation for a road trip, first you need to check a few things off your list. You got to have a valid driver's license. You have to secure a reasonable, reliable vehicle. And you have to map out a route, or at least have an idea of where you're going. So first, before you hit the road, you have to have that valid ID. And we've all been there. The slow to seemingly never moving lines, the sweaty smell of too many people in a shoebox-like space, and how desperately we cling to the ticket we pulled, endlessly hoping that they'll call out our number to secretly, before the day is over, because we've been waiting there for hours. That desperate hurry up and wait, that unsettling feeling that everyone else is trying to cut in front of you in line, is kind of how law school plays with your mind. Second, you must secure a reliable vehicle that can get you through your road trip. For me, that vehicle has been my desire to be an attorney. A number of my friends are practicing attorneys, and they strenuously counseled me against this decision. One of them is out there in the crowd, and he still thinks this is a terrible idea for me. And despite our differing opinions, I know that I could have not survived law school without my own unwavering determination, which propelled me here today. Turning to my fellow graduates, I've been inspired throughout law school, observing the full-time parents who balance their family lives while performing at a high level as full-time students. I've watched classmates recover from acts of violence, unexpected losses, and bounce back with a reliance and a resilience that reinforces their unwavering character. The third most important pre-trip item is to map out the ideal route. For me, it was a bumpy misadventure, and I'm happy to say now that Tulsa is my home. I know that TU was the right course for me and my classmates too, because as graduates, we converged here from places like Texas, California, Arizona, Missouri, Illinois, and Nebraska. But you can only do so much preparation for a road trip. Eventually, we all gas up our rides, pack up our bags, and hit the road. That brings us to the actual trip. While they always seem like a good idea, once the rubber hits the road, second thoughts start to emerge. Like, why didn't I take that Southwest flight? Or, whose brilliant idea was it to drive to Las Vegas over Labor Day weekend? Most typical road trips, regardless of the final destination, eventually implicate three recurring elements: dirty bathrooms, flat tires, and hidden gems. First, like every road trip, law school has its share of dirty bathrooms. And you don't have to be embarrassed to admit it, and we've all experienced one before. But after drinking a bottle of water, 2 sugar-free Red Bulls, and maybe a Dr. Pepper 10 if you're manly enough, there's nothing more desperately we need than a nice, clean bathroom to seek relief. And as you desperately pray for the next neon sign to appear over the horizon, and of course it's never a Buc-ee's or a Quick Trip, but of course it's instead a high-volume mega truck stop or a crumbling local gas station. And I don't need to go into any detail about what actually happens in these facilities, but you always come out wishing that someone would have awarded you with the celebratory bath of a 10-gallon got of hand sanitizer, just like you won the Super Bowl of feeling icky. To apply this concept to law school, everywhere you turn for these 3 years, there's a grimy truck stop bathroom waiting for you. I'm talking about things like the joys of property, future interests, perpetuities, subsiding, and secured transactions. I could go on, but the graduates and attorneys in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. Second, on road trips and in law school, we're prone to suffer the occasional flat tire. It doesn't matter how carefully you drive or how new your tires are, because you will inevitably run over a rusty nail or a gnarly piece of metal object that at the most inopportune time. As a non-traditional student, which really means that I'm just really old, I thought I would make a smooth transition back into academia. And in the famous words of college game day host Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. 1L year totally humbled me. I learned from my bad habits and decided to try my luck at this place called the library. Who knew that the MLIC wasn't just a place to house old books, but instead it doubled as a convenient place to study and limit the distractions which constantly were vying for our attention as law students: Facebook, Twitter, fantasy football, Sports Champion, or The Bachelor. But in all seriousness, without my girlfriend, the love of my life, Rachel Hubner, I would not be up here today. She taught me that what it takes to be a good student is dedication and studying, which both inspired me and enabled me to reconnect with some semblance of whatever academic prowess I actually had. The third aspect of a road trip are the hidden gems. By hidden gem, I mean the random diner you stop at on a trip. It might look suspect, and you kind of second guess yourself as you take that exit that's kind of sketchy off the interstate, but you end up finding the best cheeseburger you ever didn't know existed. And at other times, the hidden gem is the scenic ridge you unexpectedly come across on your drive, which gives you that perfect moment to ponder larger questions. During that road trip, it's law school, we've all had our hidden gem moments. As law students, we experience both the common suffering that is the procrastination related to studying for finals. At the same time, we reveled in the relief that sets in once finals are complete, only to wait another month until grades are posted. So as we find ourselves in such a moment right now, let's take a few seconds to enjoy it. Now, wasn't that nice? Now, only to acknowledge the real elephant in the room. Just like Voldemort is to Harry Potter, the much-hyped, entirely demented, and utterly evil exam awaits all of us who want to be a licensed attorney. It's these real hidden gems in law school that go beyond our shared suffering. I posit that what matters most are the friendships we've made here at TU Law. As we graduate today, wearing all these unnecessary cords, tutor bonnets and TAMs and medals and stoles, it's not these outward signs that define us, but it's the character we carry forward. Law school is like a road trip. First, you prepare as best as possible, then you hit the road, and once the trip is over, you step back and reflect on how far you've come. Our law school road trip has come to an end, and it was a bumpy road. It had its ups and downs, but we made it. So over the next few days and months, as we study, cram, and slave away in the basement of the MLIC, our period of reflection begins. At this moment, too, I'd like to just think about some of the students that didn't make it through our class, whether it was by choice or otherwise, like Max. And in closing, I'd like to offer a heartfelt thank you to all of our family and friends. Without your patience and support, we could not have reached this goal. It's now my pleasure to introduce the most intelligent and interesting law student I know, our class valedictorian and friend, Rachel Jones.
Thank you, Nolan. Nolan would not ever let anyone know this, and I'm going off the book now. Y'all know me, that's kind of what I like to do. And I just want to say, Nolan is the greatest example of servant leadership that I think our class and this university could ever ask for. So I want to personally thank you, Nolan, for representing us as a student body so well over the past year. So earlier this week and month, I wrote a speech, and I had planned to tell you to change the world. And then I thought about it a little more, and I realized that that was a bad idea. You know, first, let's be honest. You know the routine. Pollyanna gets up here, and you instantly stop listening. Second, even if you did listen, you'd quickly realize that being told to change the world isn't empowering. It's nebulous. Like being told your whole life you can do anything. It's too vast to be helpful. And third, and perhaps most frightening, is the reality that changing the world isn't inherently good. Many people have changed the world in terrible ways. So, to tell you to change the world is dangerous. But it can't be undone. You're thinking about it right now. Maybe it was your motivation for coming to law school. I know it was part of mine. But somewhere along the way, many of us have decided it's too hard, that we need to be contented with our lives, that it sounds too naive, that our expectations are too high, or that it's just something for the Gandhis and Dr. Kings of this world. We've traded in the idea for the comfortable notion of work-life balance in a minivan. So I'm not here to tell you to change the world. That's not good enough advice. I want to ask for something more specific. I want to ask you to leave it better than you found it. There's this wonderful word that encapsulates this idea, usufruct. In DET, Professor Spoo taught many of us Jefferson's phrase, "The earth belongs in usufruct to the living." And it was strange to most of us. It was strange to me at the time. But the legal concept of usufruct actually predates the Roman law, and it's changed a little over the centuries. Usufruct referred to the right to make all the use and profit of a thing that can be made without injuring the substance of the thing itself. Title to land reverts to the larger society upon the holder's death. Society may, of course, choose to pass on the land to specific individuals chosen by the original landholder, but there is nothing in natural law which requires this. And that's what we're told usufruct means. But I think there's more to it than that. From 1785 to 1789, Thomas Jefferson served as minister to France. Just as the American colonists had grappled with questions of hereditary monarchy, the French were also questioning the institutions that had maintained a system of entrenched inequality in their country. These arrangements were designed to have the perpetual force of law. French philosophers and political activists were beginning to question whether their ancestors, hundreds of years earlier, possessed the legitimate authority to impose such arrangements on their descendants. At the same time, on this side of the Atlantic, Americans were fashioning a constitution. Having just asserted their independence from their own ancestors' political entanglements, they had now to consider whether and to what extent they could impose perpetual laws and limitations on their own descendants. It was with this backdrop that Jefferson shared his thoughts in a series of letters to American framers. The most famous of these is his letter to James Madison. Jefferson begins that letter by asserting, "The question whether one generation of men has a right to bind another is a question of such consequences as to not only merit decision, but place among the fundamental principles of every government. I set on this ground, which I suppose to be self-evident, that the earth belongs in usufruct to the living." Jefferson asserts that each generation has the right to inherit undiminished that same topsoil capital that its predecessors had enjoyed. This paradigm treats the earth as being entailed ultimately to the larger society as a whole. Of course, Jefferson wasn't just talking about inheriting a farm. The idea applies beyond the soil. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. You see, to fully understand the phrase unalienable rights as used in the Declaration, you have to understand the debate that was going on between America and England. Americans believed that Parliament had the right to impose taxes, did not have the right to impose taxes and other burdens on a colonial population that was not represented in Parliament. It was an abrogation of the colonists' rights as Englishmen. Meanwhile, Parliament contended that the colonists did not possess the full set of English rights because their ancestors had surrendered the full rights of English citizenship upon immigration to the United States. They had surrendered those rights not only for themselves, but for their descendants as well. And in fact, the language in many of the colonial charters supports this argument. So in the Declaration, Jefferson reframed the argument. Instead of talking about American claims to the rights of Englishmen, he makes the claim based on natural rights, which by their very nature could not be irretrievably surrendered or forfeited by one generation on behalf of their posterity. It is a set of usufruct rights and responsibilities. Modernly, we think of unalienable rights in only the vaguest sort of a way, as some ill-defined set of elements that belong to the individual and a government or political majority can't take away from us. But to the signatories of the Declaration and the framers of our Constitution, they were standing in opposition to the English proposition on colonial rights. They fully understood that unalienable rights referred to the generational sovereignty that the doctrine of usufruct ensured. Consequently, no generation can validly create perpetual laws, constitutions, or property rights that extend beyond the existence of the generation that created them. That is the American dream. Each generation has only a usufruct right. It is the profound hope that this principle creates that unshackles us from the past and creates a bridge towards the future. It is this same idea of generational sovereignty that gave us Seneca, Selma, and Stonewall. In a letter only months before his death, Jefferson asked, "But can constitutions be made unchangeable? Can one generation bind another and all others in succession forever? I think not. The Creator has made the earth for the living, not the dead. Nothing then is unchangeable but the inherent and unalienable rights of men." So what? What does this mean to me? I think it means this. I cannot blame my history. If I remain mired in the failures of past generations, it is through my own choice. We are the living. That's something remarkable. And it's heavy. That powerful freedom doesn't mean we must change the world. It means you have to care. Wake up and do something. Start with something little, like making eye contact in this digital world we live in. Find the audacity to step to the drumbeat you hear. Pursue truth. Recognize, as Dr. King did, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It gives us responsibility, personally and collectively, responsibility to use that freedom wisely, and the challenge to leave things better than you found them, to enjoy the fruits of today, but to also build a better future. And it's a big responsibility. Honestly, sometimes it's scary to speak up. I've been going for a long time, and I'm still a little scared. Sometimes it's inconvenient to care enough to do something. But I think that is the responsibility we have as the living. To have the moxie to speak and the courage to act. You can choose to remain silent when you see injustice. You can have a tidy, comfortable life. Or you can claim your place among the living. Sometimes a kick in the pants that you really need comes from a kid. And I know Max would have wanted me to share something from Kid President, for sure. That kid says, "Boring is easy. Everyone can be boring, but you're gooder than that. This is life, people. You've got air coming through your nose, and your heart beats. That means it's time to do something. What will you create to make the world more awesome? Nothing if you keep sitting there." Or as Dolly Parton said in her simple, profound way, "If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one." Leave this world better than you found it. And the most exciting thing to me today is to look out and realize that that's exactly the journey we've all begun. Each one of us is leaving this law school and each other better than we found each other. Not only undiminished, but enhanced for the time that we've spent together. We don't have to change the world, but we are leaving it better than we found it, because we are the living. So if there's one word that you learn at law school, let it be usufruct.
Now for the hooding of the graduates, I will be assisted by Dean Cordell and Dean Bridges.
Gregory Allen Eberhard. He will be hooded by Sheena Burgess. Justin Ryan Murley. Scott Allen Briggs. John Austin Glad. He will be hooded by Professor Parker. Todd Arnold. He will be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Chad Cody Harsha. He'll be hooded by Professor Rice. Brad Timothy Elrod. Brandon Norris. He'll be hooded by Professor Rice. Emily McLean. Delinda Clark. She'll be hooded by Dean Inserov. Melissa Ann Bell. She'll be hooded by Assistant Dean Christy Caves. Vidinalata Estina Krishna. She'll be hooded by Dean Inserov. Edwina Bendy Christensen. She'll be hooded by Assistant Dean Christy Caves. Jasper Johan Den Harder. He will be hooded by Judge Wolf. Jackie Eicher. She'll be hooded by Judge Wolf. Spencer Pittman. He'll be hooded by me. Nicholas Hancock. He will be hooded by Mike Ashworth. Spencer Coons. He'll be hooded by Lewis Reynolds. Trey Brantley. He'll be hooded by me. Derek Scott Brown. AJ Martinez. He'll be hooded by Professor Yasser. Elisa Hopkins. Kyle Counts. Christopher Lee Garner. He'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Katie Coulter. She'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Andrea Nicole Seldowitz. She'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Caitlin Jane Murphy. Sarah Dawn Zickafoos. She will be hooded by Professor Mary Ann Blair. Elaine Marie Dunlap. She'll be hooded by Professor Mary Ann Blair. April Janae Moaning. She'll be hooded by Professor Parker. Benoni and Samana Parsons. He'll be hooded by Professor Parker. Brodney Moses. He'll be hooded by Professor Parker. Sarah Ann Llewellyn. She'll be hooded by Dean Inseroth. Caitlin Quinn Twyman. She'll be hooded by Professor McCormick. Jack Bean. Nick Major. Stephen Freiberg. He'll be hooded by me. Vincent Maxwell Bruner. Luke Erbacher. Richard Jackson McLaren. Todd Stephen Newcomb. He'll be hooded by Assistant Dean April Fox. Wyatt McCabe Cox. He'll be hooded by Lou Reynolds. Andy Dunn. He'll be hooded by me. William Radler. He'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Kendra King. She'll be hooded by Assistant Dean Kay. Natalie Guerrero. She'll be hooded by Assistant Dean Caves. Peter Timothy Woodson. Whitney Tempest Bowman. She'll be hooded by Professor McCormick. Amber Sweet. She'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Casey Ann Schleck. Brandy Lee Robles. She'll be hooded by Professor Arnold. Valerie Olivia Giebel. She'll be hooded by Professor Royster. Amber Renee Gilbert. She'll be hooded by Professor Fry. Destin Stallings. She'll be hooded by Professor Parker. Traylina Scott. She'll be hooded by me. Adam Kendall Kaltenbach. He'll be hooded by Professor McCormick. Jordan Ward. Oh, good. Good girl. Jenna Frances Davidson. She'll be hooded by Professor Marianne Blair. Stuart Paul Ashworth. He'll be hooded by Professor Lemus. Joshua Wade Atwood. He'll be hooded by Professor Lemus. Gregory Andrew Lavender. He will be hooded by Professor Fry. William Brownfield. Stephen Naparano. Gus Thornton Hughes. He'll be hooded by Professor Arnold. Catherine Petrita. She'll be hooded by me. Colin Michael Fowler. He'll be hooded by Professor Spoo. Brian Shepard. He'll be hooded by Professor Hallaby. Kinsey Rubel. She'll be hooded by Professor Marianne Blair. Rebecca Hill. She'll be hooded by Professor Insaroff. Christopher Davis. Amanda Caitlin Mims. She'll be hooded by Professor Marianne Blair. Lindsay Hogan. She'll be hooded by Dean Inserall. Kenneth Martin. He'll be hooded by Professor Marianne Blair. Paige Walters. Samantha Beth Seberg. She'll be hooded by Professor Zadalis. Jamie Miller. She'll be hooded by Professor Piety. Brooke Nicole Tennyson. Benjamin Robert Serranovic. He'll be hooded by April Fox and Sheena Burgess. Mark Ryan Morgan. He will be hooded by Michael Ashworth. Kristen Noelle Traeger. She'll be hooded by Sheena Burgess. Andrew Gilbert Smith. He'll be hooded by Professor Yasser. Jason Groves. He'll be hooded by Professor Allison. Harry Gowdy Fuqua. Howard Berkson. He'll be hooded by me. Derek Norris. Brooke Adele Christie. Lacey Sykes Bryant. She'll be hooded by Professor Mary Ann Blair. Erin Beth Potter. She'll be hooded by Professor Mansfield. Nicole Saunders. Rachel Faye Hughes. She'll be hooded by Dean Insarov. Rachel Ann Jones. She'll be hooded by Professor Fry. Nolan Morris Fields IV. He'll be hooded by Professor Fry. That completes our JD candidates. Our LLM graduate for this year is Dennis Otio. He'll be hooded by Professor Allison. The next four graduates are graduates of our Master of Jurisprudence in Indian Law. This is our first graduating class. The first to be hooded is Benny Francisco Jr. He'll be hooded by Bill Rice, Professor Rice. Cynthia May Tiger. She'll be hooded by Professor Rice. Joanna Gale Lucas. She'll be hooded by Professor Rice. F.E. Knowles Jr., he will be hooded by Professor Rice.
Let's give another round of applause to the class of 2013. Graduates, you may now take your tassels from the right to the left. Congratulations. I would like to now welcome Chaplain Francis back to the podium for the benediction.
I invite you to stand as well, if you would. Now go from this place, transformed by what you have received. Go with great joy in your step, but live with humility in your heart. Celebrate the vast expanse of possibilities before you. And may God, who creates, redeems, and sustains us, guide and direct your path every step of the way. Amen.